Hey guys, I'm Sid and I got an offer from Oxford for engineering this year, and I'd like to share my thoughts on how you can manage the admissions process and come out of it in top shape physically and mentally. So if you imagine yourself as a person before the process and afterwards, you can see an improvement in everything, not just academics. I'll be showing you how to manage your life outside admissions alongside your A levels, and basically just not letting the process consume you as a whole. So here you can see the actual, there you go, admissions process, and on the left you can see it starts from June and it ends in January. So it's quite a time intensive process, and you basically want to minimize stress throughout these 6 months. You're going to have a lot of other things to deal with, and it can get quite a lot. So I would think of each bullet point mentioned there as sort of like a hurdle, and you want to be getting over these hurdles comfortably at the start, so that once you get to the interview, which is the part with the most variability, you can go into it top confidence and smash it basically. So as you can see, I started very early on my revision for my entrance test, and I got a score of 87, and the average score of all offer holders was 70. So obviously that put me in a good position going into the interview. And even though I thought I'd had fairly below average interviews, I managed to get an offer in the end. So it just tells the importance of preparing early. The second thing is obviously you need to keep up with your A levels, but I wouldn't say you need to prioritize them. I would have a fundamental understanding of all the concepts you learn, but I wouldn't get too worked up over trying to memorize all the little things that come with A levels. So I'll hopefully be doing a detailed guide on each of these in the future, particularly the entrance test. And I have my own solutions for PAT 2023 that I'll be releasing soon. So here we come now to life outside admissions, which is sort of the main point of this video. And without beating around the bush, the process is going to take a lot of sacrifice, and that means you're going to have to prioritize things. You can't do everything that you were doing before, but that also doesn't mean that you put all of your eggs in one basket and just neglect everything else that you've been doing, because you want to be growing as a person, not just putting your heart and soul into Oxford. So the four non-negotiables I always hold above everything else is sleep, sunlight, diet, and hydration. And these four are relatively low effort, but very easy to fall out of the habit of. And you need to maintain these throughout the process. Secondly, is it endorphins or just general hormonal health. So I think your dopamine can easily get drained during this period because it's a very lofty goal and it's very independent. So you've got you and then your goal, and you've got a lot of empty space in between that you need to fill by yourself. And the revision can sometimes seem like it's not even worth it because you've got hours and hours to do, and you might not even get in. So this is all going to be very mentally draining. So you're going to have to recharge somehow. And for me, that's through exercise. As you can see, these photos were taken probably a week before my PAT, so my entrance test. And but it could be anything. It could be music. For me, it's sports. You could do football or just any hobby. But I'd advise keeping outside of academics because then you're just repeating the same thing. And I'd also advise against striving for perfection or getting too, again, worked up in what you're doing, because at the end of the day, it's a hobby. And if you're constantly striving for perfection, that's just not possible, and you're just going to get even more stressed. So to minimize resistance for these tasks, um, you should be doing them ideally either straight after or before school. So this just removes the time you waste, the downtime between the end of school and the time you actually start being productive again. And I find that this just saves me a lot of time and it doesn't really allow my brain to think to not to do these tasks. It just happens. So another important thing is that you should probably reduce your screen time. So mine is about 2 or 3 hours a day, which is still pretty high, but it's not that bad. And yeah, just living your world in an online bubble, it can be unhealthy, especially in a time where you're so focused on yourself and you're putting to yourself to quite high standards. It can feel like you're missing out on a lot. And I just think it's a lot healthier just to try and cut that down as much as possible. And that just ties into my next point, which is social life. So the process is quite lonely at times, you could say, because you are the only person likely that you know putting yourself all through this. And if you do know other people, then you're sort of competing with them in a way, um, not to show any vulnerability or anything. So you need to deal with that yourself. And that's just a poor coping mechanism. You need to have these people, like your family, your friends, around you as a support network so that you can sort of break out of the bubble that is admissions. Because at the end of the day, life is so much more than that. So I already mentioned reducing resistance, but um, I also use schedules and general systems that remove the thought in your head. So, like, if you wake up in the morning and you have to choose which clothes you wear every day, for example, but if you've somehow planned that the night before, you know exactly what you're going to wear, obviously saves you a lot of time. So, you should be doing these things to avoid draining mental energy on things that you don't really need to be spending it on. And then the last 2 points are sort of the same as what I've mentioned before. Um, don't make a decision that you know future you will have to solve. So for small things like getting an A instead of an A star on a test, for example, that's fine. But if you are skipping exercise every day, or even just not getting out of the house every day because sunlight and just not being caved up in your room is very important for your mental health, then you're leaving that for future you to sort out. And these things don't magically get fixed. They're created through weeks and months of doing them again and again and again. It's quite hard to dig yourself out of that hole, especially if you get rejected. And even if you do get accepted, it's worth thinking about how you're going to deal with these kind of things in uni, which I will talk about later on. And yeah, so just to come back to the last point, it's making sure all the other wheels in your life keep turning, so to speak, so that they don't fall off.
So, guys, to finish up, I'm just going to talk about mindset and what to do on decision day and beyond that. So, most people, if they do get rejected from Oxford, they're upset for three reasons. And they are, first of all, the attachment to Oxford itself as an academic institution or the place. The second is your work or the work or effort you put in to get to this point. And the third is your ego. So, the first reason, while Oxford is obviously a very good place and there's a reason why you applied to it in the first place, there are so many good alternatives. Like for me, I study engineering, so Imperial would be almost as good, if not better, in some areas. Maybe if you're doing economics, LSE is almost as good. And any Russell group generally will have a very high standard of education. So you now and you when you're 22, maybe just finishing uni, that matters so much less. The uni you go to matters so much less than the work you put in when you get there, the people you meet when you get there. So Oxford just really isn't the be all and end all. The second is your work. And while it's easy to think this to start with, if you view the application process not as just a means to an end, not just to get that acceptance letter, I think you can take so many valuable lessons from it, as I'll touch on in the next point. And the last one is your ego. And that's basically when you go around telling people or telling everyone you meet, oh, I got into Oxford, oh, I got into Oxford. And that gives you a massive sense of pride. And you just don't want to be that guy who makes it your personality because it seems very forced. And it's all well and good saying, oh, I got an offer from Oxford, but you still haven't achieved the offer yet. And you don't really know whether Oxford will suit you yet because you haven't had the experience. So the benefits of the application process, um, that's mainly going to be the independence that you had to take it upon yourself in the first place and the self motivation that required. And also in the future, if you really want to have success, there will be some massive highs and massive lows, far bigger than um, what the application will bring. And the workload during the application will actually seem relatively small in the future, but the lessons you've learned to put yourself through it, those you can keep for 5, 10 years, and, and just gives you a massive head start of everyone else in life. Because they've all stuck to the normal A level system, which isn't bad, but they haven't taken this upon themselves and really pushed themselves as hard as they can. So no matter what happens, you're going to benefit from this. And if you consider the life in Oxford as well, it's sort of like a trial for life in Oxford because the workload at Oxford will be incredibly hard. And if you are unable to manage it in the application process, and you might not be able to manage it so well there, or you'll be able to develop tools to manage it better once you go to such a place. So once you've got your interviews done, I remember my interview finished at about 12:30 at night because of the time difference, and I basically just crashed and just took a few weeks off. So I went on holiday and just had some time to think really and reflect on my performance. I didn't think I did very well. And just to highlight a point, unless you literally didn't speak during the interview at all, you cannot judge your performance. You could be arrogant and think you did way better than you actually did, but what you said had very little substance. Or you could think you did awful, but maybe they were just looking to challenge you. So don't make a concrete decision on whether you're getting in or not before the actual decision day. And on decision day itself, once you get your email, just I'd recommend to spend some time alone and just reflect on the journey you've made really over the last 6 to 9 months because it is a big undertaking and you will have grown as a person between now and then. And it's important to reflect on what you have developed on and also what you have neglected because we all aren't perfect. We can't just continue our normal lives. There's going to be some points where you drop, maybe it's socially, maybe it's physically, and you've just got to make sure that beyond that, whichever uni you end up going to in 8 months, you need to build yourself back up into peak shape. You need to make your offer for either Oxford or any other uni, and you just need to be really smashing it. So by the time you start uni next year or next academic year, you're going into it in the best shape of your life. So thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you soon.